But I get also the sense that the audience is kind of itching for things to get opened up. So perhaps now, considering we've been going on for quite some time up here alone, does anyone have any questions or comments or thoughts? Do you need time to...
Are the actors leaving us forever? Are they coming back? Are they coming back?
Yes.
Oh, good. Yeah. I didn't want them to leave without being introduced, so we'll do that at the end.
Yeah, that's good.
Forgive me.
That's good.
Very quiet crowd. I'm sure someone... Yes?
I'd be interested, given the clear differences between the two systems, I'd be interested in what each of you would say that you most envy about the other's range of opportunities.
That's a wonderful question, I think. I love the fact that directors have been developed in this particular system. I mean, one of the things I've been seeing one of the reasons I responded probably to Amy's letter was because I have a great deal of interest in German theater, and was introduced to it in the early 1970s in an early visit I made to Germany, and then throughout the 80s seeing the work of some of the legendary German directors in Scotland at the Edinburgh Festival, and have admired tremendously the sort of rigor intellectually and athletically of some of the major German directors who have inspired me. And there's a sort of system with which they have been developed and worked, and I think also an authority that they have been given over the work, which I've really sort of admired. And the fact that in this country, directors who are working at a very high level of theatricality and imagination and even authority are rare. You know, that part of it is, I mean, I love new plays and I love new playwriting, but I also find myself quite often bored with American directing, which is at service always of the play, and should be. I, for example, love directing I like to go back and forth between working on a new play where my responsibility is to that writer on giving them the vision they want. And that's how I feel to doing my own productions, let's say, of Measure for Measure or King Lear, to grab two recent examples that could be sort of larger expressions. And I also do admire, although I remember going to Russia once and saying the thing I love most about Russian theater was the companies. We go to a Moscow Art Theater and there's an extraordinary company of actors, and going, I really wish I could have a company of actors, and then talking to a Russian director saying, basically, how the hell do you get rid of actors? Because we're sick of working with this acting company. They're on state contracts and we just can't get rid of them. As opposed to me romanticizing the idea of having this company working. But I must say, I greatly admire in the German system the sense of repertory companies, and I love the sense of the ability to create a large repertoire that you can bring. That's the other thing, and then I'll turn it over. The thing, it's such a beautiful word, ephemeral. It's one of the most beautiful words, I think, in the English language, ephemeral. But of course, it means disappearance, and the theater becomes very ephemeral, and it only exists in our memories. And I just completed a production of Uncle Vanya, which I enjoyed working on very much with a wonderful company of actors. And it's a production which I wish could come back in 6 months or in a year, or that I could keep it in, let's say, a repertory where it could get richer and deeper, and you could come back to it and have a life for it. And generally that doesn't happen. Occasionally it does, but for the most part, an American, a wonderful production just disappears. And something I admired in Munich, for example, was seeing a very famous production of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf that was created maybe 5 years ago or more. 5?
Even more.
Maybe more.
Yeah.
I mean, a very famous production with 4 extraordinary actors, stars, and it continued to come back. It did not disappear. It continued to have a life. And I thought that was extraordinary.
After the life of the director.
Yes. Yes, I mean, that was another production we talked about, a production, yes, of very famous production of Vanya and Seagull, for example, that remain in the repertory of which theater in Berlin? The Deutsches Theater. The Deutsches Theater. After the death of the director, the productions have continued on and been a vital part of the life. So I admire that.
Do I envy anything?
Envy might be too strong. I went straight to admire.
No, but as I said, I think there's a lot we can learn, and in terms of developing text for stages, and that's something that's extremely rich. There's so much energy and resources and time going into that. I really admire this, and I think we can. You don't have to envy it. You can sort of go back and try to sort of see what you can do.
Yes, sir.
Do I need a mic?
No, you have a pretty good booming voice. We'll repeat if we need
Can
to.
actors make a living in München if they don't have a contract with the Residenztheater, or do they have to work as waitresses and taxi drivers?
If they have a contract, they don't do anything else, and there are many companies, and there are smaller theaters that still get subsidies from for single projects or for longer terms. So there are quite a few possibilities to sort of earn, if not decent, then at least sufficient salaries. I think the conditions are better than here, as far as my conversations now.
Subsidies from München or from the federal government?
Both. Not federal, but the state government. That's Bavaria. We have a feudal system in culture and feudalistic. Or federalistic. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Okay.
I
That's not so
I thought he meant feudal.
Okay, you make so it's not the federal government, but it's the state governments that and the municipal government, and so I think it's easier without being a waiter than here. Can I say something else to Elfriede Jelinek?
Yes,
because that is the choices Amy made are so interesting, because she's sort of the other extreme to what Milo Rau does, because she's extremely on her own. There is no collective writing at all. Legend has it that she barely leaves her house at all. She's completely with herself and with remarkable amounts of literature. And as they're saying that the TV is running all the time while she's writing. So there is no such or everything that comes into these texts are information that are already formed, and plenty of them. If you sort of work on these texts, you find references of philosophy, of ancient Greek drama, of the religious texts, and all sorts of references, and then the bibble bubble of the TV, and then there are 120 pages, and she gives them away completely, which means if you do a production of a Elfriede Jelinek text, if you do a world premiere of an Elfriede Jelinek text, you're not obliged to use any of the text. There is one example Bambiland, the play that was produced here. The world premiere, I think, and it's a huge text too, about the Iraq War and Abu Ghraib and all that, and this production used like 4 or 5 minutes of the entire text on video. And the rest was a big, huge installation in the Vienna Burgtheater with all kinds of different texts and all kinds of action and installations around it, and she's completely fine with that. So it's an extreme way of literary production, completely closed as a process, and then it's completely open to anything you would do. Except for adding other texts. She doesn't like that. But you can do with it whatever you want, and you have to. You can't. There is no way of trying to follow the vision of this text, or to bring this text to the stage. It's impossible.
It must be filtered through
yes,
an artist.
Yes, you have. It
must be filtered in some way.
And that's what it's made for. And so that's. I think that's it works in that way that this play is done 4, 5, 6. There are 4, 5, 6 productions now in German theater of this very text. So it's really that open that people sort of are inspired by it and pick it and do what they think is best with it. And it's very complicated and very, very inspiring to sort of try to make your own theater production out of this material. So that's something I wanted to add, sort of, because these two processes are so completely different. The approach.
I do have another question. Does either of you prefer to work with a live author as opposed to someone that is dead? I'm a translator, and I prefer to translate books when the author is still alive. Now, would that influence you also in your production of a play?
Well, you know, it's sort of what I said. They're very, very different things. You know, they just, you know, there are times when you wish the playwright you were working with was dead. and there are times when you're working with a play where you wish it could be...
Some of them died too soon.
Yes, I know. But then there are other times where you're working on a classic play and you wish the individual was there to help explain or to collaborate with you. As I said, they're entirely different experiences, at least for me, you know, and they're both equally satisfying. They're equally satisfying to work on a new play with a living writer, as well as a classical text with a playwright who's no longer with us.
And we'll have time
It doesn't always make such a big difference.
No.
We'll have time for one more question.
I think there are 2 more people back here. There's a gentleman with his hand up. Maybe. Yes, sir.
You know, there's some criticism of German opera productions as being self-congratulatory echo chambers when the state supplies all the money and the attitude is, well, the public be damned, because they're not educated enough to really understand the wonderful things that we're, the creativity that we're doing. Is there a danger in theater, German theater, that it becomes so insular and isolated really from the realities of the culture?
Yes, in a way. On the other hand, I didn't want to give the impression that we are not dependent on how many people want to see our shows. We are, not as directly, because the amount of money that we actually make by selling tickets is not the most important factor that we live on, but the numbers of seats taken are politically extremely relevant to us. So we now have like 80% over the whole year of the seats taken, and that is a good number. And once this drops,
There are consequences.
yeah. If it drops by an essential number. So, but at the same time, we always have to sort of, as we sort of try to, as the directors are so important and they're competing, you sometimes get you sometimes find that they're trying to do things differently. So they sometimes, I always get a little unquiet when people come to me, directors come and say, I don't want to do it like he did it or she did it or another one, because you sort of have to find your own way of doing things instead of avoiding solutions that have been around. And if you find someone talking to you like that, then you sort of think that only refers to things you have seen or things that you think are important now. And it's good to react, of course. I mean, that is what art is. You react to other artistic expressions. What else do you do? And you react to the history of the play and how it is, how it was done in history. But at the same time, you sort of have to try to make yourself readable and understandable, and to get into a dialogue. It doesn't make sense if that doesn't work, then it's not theater. Because if you're not there, then there's no theater.
That's an excellent note. I want to thank again the actors for their contribution this evening, and to thank the Goethe-Institut and the Goodman Theatre and the Literary Department and the Goodman Theatre for all of their organization, and to thank you all for coming this evening.
Who are the actors?
Yeah.
Yes, they are John Hogenacker. John. Gabe Ruiz. And Cristina Velada Villares. Thank you all.
Thank you.
American and German.
Oder?